And welcome to Civil Discourse. I'm Jamie Wojciechowski.
And I'm Marilyn Brown. And tonight we are talking about Meryl Streep's speech last night at the Golden Globes. Her acceptance speech, she was accepting the Cesar B. DeMille Award. And she gave a pretty interesting speech where she brought up some her concerns about the political climate. And so I wanted to just kind of start off by hearing some of your thoughts on the speech and just what you thought about it when you saw it.
Yeah, I thought it was a very emotional speech, and she had lost her voice, so I don't know if that added to the emotional content of it. Just it having this element of being hard to say, but there were pauses and just moments you could tell she got choked up beyond just having no voice. But I
Mm-hmm.
thought one, I've been kind of looking through what everyone's saying about it, and it seems I think. At least from what I've read, there's been a lot more positive than negative, but there is a strong counter reaction, which whenever you criticize Trump in any kind of place, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found interesting about it was before, when I had just seen it, before I had read anything about other people's reactions or kind of listened to what other people had to say about it, the first thing I thought was this. It didn't feel like a speech about Trump to me, which is kind of where the news automatically went. Like every headline was she blasts Trump and all these things, and it didn't. I mean, she definitely talked about him, and it. There was an element, but it was beyond that. She was talking about empathy, and she had this big part about an actor's job being to go and understand characters and people they do not understand, and sharing that experience with others, and sharing that empathy as a shared experience. And she challenged Hollywood in general and everyone in the room to really focus on that and make that their kind of why, and to really push for that empathy part of the art. And she also, I thought, on it wasn't just an anti-Trump speech, because at the end she made it about what you could do, and she was talking about the committee for a safe press. I can't remember the exact what exactly called.
Um, I can't think of it either,
Yes,
but
I'll put it below when I get it. But yeah, it was a call to action. So I feel like it was a very solid speech, because yes, there's the emotion there, but it was also about the art and about what people could actually do if they agreed with her and wanted to help.
yeah, I agree. I think that the it's so much easier to pick out the small parts that were about Trump and focus on that. And so, I didn't actually see the speech until today. And so I saw a lot about it. I saw a lot of headlines about it before I actually got a chance to sit and watch it. And then when I watched it, I was like, okay, she said a couple of specific things about things that he said, but I think that you're right. She really was more so talking about just and very emotionally and authentically talking about the change in kind of the climate overall, and really less about Trump, and just kind of more, she was talking about bullying and these kind of this culture of kind of attacking each other, and speaking more about that. And I think that you're right that she really did have a lot to say about solutions, which I think is a very mindful way to talk about any of these things. Is finding a way to bring about some sort of a way that we can work on it. And so I really appreciated that part as well. But I think that it's frustrating for me that oftentimes something that I think it was a really good and pretty mindful speech can kind of be reduced to an attack be reduced to this idea that it was just an attack on Trump, because I think it really wasn't about that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, she never even used his name, one. And then the big thing that stuck out to me, and I could read it, is and this instinct to humiliate when it's modeled by someone in the public platform, by someone powerful. It filters down into everybody's life because it kind of gives permission for other people to do the same. Disrespect invites disrespect. Violence incites violence. When the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose. And I think it's just, I don't know how anyone outside of it being you Trump supporters having kind of a shield up against criticizing for him, how anyone can just listen to that and take Trump out of it and not agree or not see where the problem in using the public sphere and your privilege of being in the public eye to bully or condescend or whatever it is. And I saw a lot of people who didn't like the speech say, still coming up with that, well, you can't prove that he was actually making fun of that journalist. And they showed other videos about how it's just who he is and it's natural and there's nothing, the intent that he has because it's a natural behavior isn't malice or isn't to degrade people. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if we're bringing mindfulness into it, if that's your habit, it still needs to be pointed out to be corrected, because it is, no matter, it might be a habit that he got from someone or something that he doesn't even realize at this point, but that doesn't make it okay.
Right. And I also think that, and I know that she specifically brought up that instance of bullying, that if that wasn't his intention, I mean, there's so many that, that's one, very, I don't know. I mean, it's hard because I watched that video and I feel like I don't know what other intention you can take from it, but there's so many other things that he's done that are, that are clearly cases of bullying. And so whether we're focusing on that, where, okay, maybe there was a gray area. I don't know that that's really the most important thing to focus on. I mean, I just think that, and again, I think that she wasn't really specifically only talking about him. Mm-hmm. I think that if Donald Trump were the only issue, we wouldn't really be talking about this. But there's this, like she said, it's kind of emboldened when someone in power emboldens everyone else, and normalizes this type of communication. That's where the bigger problem is, and that's something that we can all find a way to address, and to be able to work on in our own lives. We can't stop the things that are coming out of his mouth or out of his Twitter, but we can all kind of look at how we're talking to each other and how we're talking to the people in our lives and communicating overall and communicating with compassion. And I really like that that's what she, talked about towards the end was empathy and compassion.
Yeah. And I think it's important to also look at who she was delivering the speech to, because mm-hmm. It was very clear to me that the speech was being delivered to the Hollywood Foreign Press and to the people in that room. Mm-hmm. Yes, she wanted to get the message out, but she was directly talking to them. And in this, I think she was bringing it up, yes, to criticize Trump, but also to remind the people in the room of their responsibility as artists and as public figures who have influence. And yes, you have this whole thing of like Hollywood elites and stuff, but people still watch those movies, those messages, whatever the messages of what you're creating in that art is affecting people, whether they're aware of it or not. So I think a lot of what she was saying was also a warning to the people in the room that they have a responsibility, and that the things they do and the characters they take on and the way they portray them and the stories that they tell have an effect, and that she wants them to take responsibility for that effect and make sure that it's a positive one that leads with empathy.
Yeah. I think you're right that she was really kind of speaking more as a call to artists, of what to do with the art and how to be responsible in what you create. But I also think that, the other criticism that I noticed online today when I was reading about it was this, which I think we see a lot, when artists or athletes speak up on whether it's social justice issues or activism, stay in your lane. You're only an actress. You're not supposed to speak out on these things. And I wonder, what do you, as an artist and an activist as well, what do you think about that?
So I did have a little back and forth with some people online today about that very specific issue. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's interesting because what I find is with most people is they only have that opinion when it's celebrities who are speaking up things that they don't agree with.
Yeah.
So today someone was online and they were talking about how celebrities shouldn't do that, and then they put an article about Mark Wahlberg making a political statement about how artists shouldn't be political. And I was like, but that's you
Right.
using a celebrity making a political statement that agrees with you. So now it's okay because the celebrity agrees with you. Like there's that disconnect there. But I
Yeah.
also think it was you could tell people don't want to the people who were fighting against me, they were fighting against me. Nothing I was going to say was going to change them, and I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to have a long debate with someone over Facebook. So I
Oh,
basically just put in it stopped the conversation quite abruptly. Actually, was that well? I mean, it's fine for us to agree or disagree, but at least it's great that we still live in a country where she has that choice, where
mm,
we can speak up whether we agree or not, but she has the right to make that choice of how she wants to use her platform.
mm-hmm.
And we have a choice. You have a choice to go watch a movie or not watch a movie if you agree with that platform or not, or however it is. But that's at least we still live in a country that's like that. I don't know if it'll be like that forever, but at least we
Right.
do now.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
something we can all agree on.
Yes, definitely. I like that response, and I also I love the way Jesse Williams responded to it. He did a really awesome NPR interview a couple of weeks ago, and he said, you don't own us. You don't get to tell people what they get to do. Why with artists is it okay to tell them that you can't have an opinion about important other issues in your life, but you wouldn't tell like your butcher that he can't have an opinion about something medical or something like that. And so it's just interesting that this kind of idea, and you're right, it's only in reaction to an opinion that someone doesn't agree with, or someone speaking up about injustice that someone doesn't agree with. But it's this idea of like, stay in your lane. That's not your place to say. People get to use their voice the way they want to use it. And if they have a larger platform because they're a celebrity, that's still their choice to be able to use their platform the way they want to. And if it offends you, that someone is speaking up on things that are important to them, I think that it's probably a better idea to kind of turn that inward and figure out what's going on, that it offends you so much that someone is speaking up on something.
Yeah, and I think it's two things. I think there's a cognitive dissonance there for sure of this. I mean, so much of the rhetoric used is freedom, freedom, freedom. And then as soon as someone does something you don't like, you want to have the free. It's like, what is freedom? It's, and
Hmm.
that's what I ask people when people are like, well, do you believe in freedom? I'm like, okay, what's your definition of freedom? Because
Right.
is it that you get to control what everyone else does because you want to be free and you think freedom is you being allowed to do whatever you want without taking a broader picture of then that means everybody can do what they want?
Hmm.
Or to me, my definition of freedom is yeah, you have freedom to the point that it infringes on other people's freedoms.
Right.
So I can do what I want, but I can't do anything that's going to infringe on someone else's life
Right.
in a negative way, or without their permission. Or I mean, freedom's such a complex thing of what it is. I think the other thing is I think it's the power element and the platform element. I think people, I, I there's a negative reaction to it because I think there's a slight feeling of maybe helplessness there
Hmm.
because people
Hmm.
don't have that platform. So
Right.
then they feel like it's not a level playing field. Especially I think with
Hmm.
Hollywood because Hollywood is I mean, I'm in Hollywood. It's very liberal. I mean, there are definitely conservatives who have very powerful voices in Hollywood, but it's overwhelmingly liberal. So I can see why conservatives would try to rally against it, because that there is a kind of concentrated power that the other side doesn't really have or doesn't perceive to have, because it's also, I mean, it's a complicated situation, because you also have Fox News, and Fox News has a much larger reach than any of the liberal media does,
Right.
in actually shaping the way people think about policy and politics. So it's just, I think
Yeah.
it's different for each side of how they use power and influence it's there, but I can see why there's such a big issue whenever a liberal Hollywood elite says something political. Because there's a
Yeah.
little, I
I see
notice
what
when
you're
people
saying.
say things, conservatives say things, there's backlash, but it tends to go away a lot quicker. Um, but I
Hmm.
think it's because it's like, oh, this actor said this, but most of Hollywood disagrees. So there's this whole barrage of other people who are calling them out at the same level, where
Right.
you also don't see that. I don't see actors of Meryl Streep's level, which, I mean, in fairness, Meryl Streep, there may not be any, but you
Phew.
don't see those. You don't see high level actors calling her out. At least I haven't. So it's
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I had never really thought about it that way. But no, I think you're right that it's perceived as a different kind of playing field.
but it's also it. I mean, it's politics. I mean, she's not Meryl Streep's speech. I don't think is swaying anybody. She's reaching the people who pretty much already agree with her and are sympathetic to what she's saying. She's enraging the people who didn't. So it's, I mean,
Mhm.
she's just, what I loved about it was the ending and how she gave, not just the ending, she did it a few times where she actually gave people something they can do who supports what she's saying. And I think that's the important part a lot of people miss, is you can go on all the rants about Trump
Mhm.
or about Hillary or about whoever you want to go on rants about, but at this point you're not swaying many people's opinions. Most people
Right.
set their opinions before they even know any facts. So what
Totally.
you're best off doing is finding ways for people who agree with you and support things you support to be active. And I've been telling a lot of people that post election who just feel um, overwhelmed by everything. I'm like, find an organization, find a cause that you care about. And it's hard because a lot of people, I mean, especially if you were really engaged through this presidential election, you, I think, get caught up in, because all the issues are covered, so people don't know where they want to focus. They say, "Oh, but I care about all these things,"
Right.
and it's like, well, you don't have time in your day to focus and combat every issue.
Mhm.
You pick one and
Right.
then really fight for that. And there's enough people that if we all picked one, they probably all be covered pretty well.
Right. Yeah, and I think that people just get overwhelmed. I think right now people are overwhelmed with the amount of things that they could get involved with. And so I think you're right. This just narrowing it down, picking one thing that's important to you, or maybe if you're somebody who really, needs a couple of things to kind of keep yourself busy, maybe two at most, but really picking things that are important to you, and where there's local ways for you to get involved. I think that getting involved with a community is really important. And so, there's a lot of different opportunities to do different things online, but a lot of, that kind of grassroots activism is happening in the community centers, and with different meetings and things like that. So I would say find something local, and try to get involved, and build a community around that, because, it is, um, I think the challenge for a lot of us right now is to not want to do everything, and to not
Mm-hmm.
overwhelm ourselves with all of the issues. And even, spending time on Facebook and going through Twitter, sometimes I just find myself getting overwhelmed with everything. And so I have to, be mindful of my own energy and my own kind of, what I'm bringing in, and kind of shut some of those things down, just so that I don't get so overwhelmed and try to do too much. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, I like what you're saying about getting engaged on the local level with whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be politics. If it could be art, it can be helping it could be anything. But the people, from a mindfulness perspective and just from self care, the people who I know who are engaged politically, but just culturally or whatever, that are the happiest are the ones that are at the local level, because I think it's easier to create change. It's easier to map out the change, because so much of it happens at the local level and then has to build and build and build until it gets to the state level or the national level or whatever it is. So it's hard when you're just solely focused on the biggest fights, because you then just see that fight. You don't see all the little fights underneath that are happening to help achieve what you're trying to achieve.
Right. Right.
But I give the speech 6 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent.